Listen carefully, not with your ears alone, but with your spirit. Because this moment right now is not random. You didn't stumble here by accident. There is a divine interruption happening in your life, and it carries a message that your soul has been crying out for, even if your mind couldn't put it into words. You have been chosen, not because you are perfect, not because you have everything figured out, but because even in your breaking, even in your confusion, there is something within you that refuses to give up. That quiet, persistent flame. That is no coincidence. That is purpose. God is saying, I have seen your silent battles, the nights where you questioned everything, the moments where you felt overlooked, forgotten, even abandoned, the weight you carried without anyone noticing. But hear this clearly: nothing you endured was wasted. Every delay, every rejection, every tear that fell when no one was watching was shaping you, not punishing you, not destroying you, preparing you. You kept asking, why is this happening to me? But the real question is, what is this preparing me for? Because what feels like isolation is actually separation for elevation. You were being pulled away from noise, from distractions, from things that would have diluted your calling. And yes, it hurt. Growth often does, but you are not the same person anymore. Something in you has shifted. You see differently now. You feel deeper now. You no longer chase what once distracted you. That's not lost, that's alignment. God is saying, you are stepping into a new season, but you must release the old one. You cannot carry doubt into a destiny that requires faith. You cannot hold on to fear while asking for purpose. Let go. Let go of the version of yourself that believed you weren't enough. Let go of the voices that told you to shrink, to settle, to stay small. Because the truth is, you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand apart. That's why your journey has felt different. That's why people misunderstood you. That's why you often felt alone even in a crowded room. It wasn't rejection. It was redirection. And now, here you are standing at a threshold. You can feel it, can't you? That tension between who you were and who you are becoming. Don't run from it. Step into it. Because on the other side of this discomfort is clarity. On the other side of this fear is power. On the other side of this moment is the life you've been praying for. But it requires something from you. Trust. Not convenient trust, but full surrender. Even when you don't understand the path. Even when the outcome isn't visible. Even when everything in you wants proof before you move. Move anyway. Because faith is not about having answers, it's about obedience in uncertainty. God is saying, I did not bring you this far to leave you here. There is more in you than you have allowed yourself to believe. More strength, more wisdom, more resilience. You survived. That should have broken you. And yet you are still here. That alone is evidence of purpose. So stop questioning your worth. Stop minimizing your journey. Stop waiting for permission to become who you already are. This is your confirmation. This is your moment. Rise not in arrogance, but in awareness. Stand not because you are fearless, but because you are called. And when doubt whispers again, and it will, remember this. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are being positioned. Everything is aligning, even if it doesn't look like it yet. So breathe and step forward, because this right here is exactly what you needed to hear. Listen closely, because this moment carries more weight than you realize. You may think you simply arrived here out of curiosity, habit, or chance, but there is a deeper movement unfolding beneath the surface of your awareness. Something beyond logic has been guiding your steps, aligning your attention, drawing you into this exact space at this exact time. This is not coincidence. This is not random. This is a divine interruption, an intentional pause placed in your path so that something greater can speak into your life. You have been moving through days that felt ordinary on the outside but heavy within. There have been thoughts you couldn't silence, questions that kept returning, a quiet restlessness that no distraction could fully soothe. Even when you tried to ignore it, it lingered. Even when you filled your time with noise, it whispered underneath. That stirring inside you is not confusion, it is awakening. It is the signal that something is shifting, something is calling you forward, something is asking you to pay attention. There are moments in life when everything seems to continue as normal, yet deep within, you sense that nothing is the same anymore. You begin to outgrow certain conversations, certain environments, certain versions of yourself. What once felt comfortable now feels limiting. What once satisfied you now leaves you empty. This is not loss, it is transition. It is the quiet evidence that you are being prepared to step into something that requires a different mindset, a different level of awareness, a different kind of strength. You may have questioned why certain doors closed without explanation, why certain connections faded despite your effort, why plans you were sure about suddenly fell apart. It is easy to interpret these moments as setbacks, as failures, as signs that something went wrong. But what if nothing went wrong? What if those endings were necessary interruptions, designed to redirect your path towards something more aligned with who you are becoming? What if what felt like rejection was actually protection, keeping you from settling into spaces that could not hold your future? There is a pattern to the way your life has unfolded, even if you have not fully recognized it yet. You have been guided away from what would have kept you stagnant and drawn toward experiences that stretched you, challenged you, and forced you to grow. It did not always feel good. In fact, much of it felt uncomfortable, uncertain, even painful. But growth rarely announces itself with ease. It often arrives disguised as disruption, as confusion, as a breaking apart of what you thought was secure. Think about the moments when everything slowed down unexpectedly, when plans were delayed, when progress seemed to stall. Those were not empty pauses. Those were sacred. Spaces where something within you was being realigned. While you were focused on what was not happening, something deeper was being prepared. Your perspective was being adjusted. Your resilience was being strengthened. Your ability to endure uncertainty was being developed. There is a reason why you could not move forward the way you wanted to before. There is a reason why certain things did not work out, no matter how hard you tried. You were not being denied, you were being redirected. There were lessons you needed to absorb, truths you needed to recognize, parts of yourself you needed to confront before you could step into what is meant for you. Without those moments of interruption, you might have rushed into situations that would have drained you, limited you, or taken you further away from your purpose. This is why you are here now, in this moment, feeling something deeper than just casual interest. There is a recognition happening within you, even if you cannot fully explain it. A sense that this message is not just words but something meant specifically for you. That feeling is not accidental. It is the result of a series of unseen alignments that have brought you to this point of awareness. You have been guided through experiences that shaped your perception, refined your instincts, and strengthened your inner voice. Even the moments that felt like mistakes were part of this process. Even the choices you wish you could undo contributed to the understanding you now carry. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. Everything has been part of a larger design that is only now beginning to reveal itself. There is something powerful about realizing that your life is not as random as it once seemed, that there is intention woven into your journey, even in the parts that felt chaotic, that you are not just reacting to circumstances, but being shaped through them. This realization changes the way you see everything. It shifts you from feeling lost to recognizing that you are in the middle of a process that is still unfolding. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not missing your moment. You are in the exact place where you are meant to be, even if it does not look the way you expect it. The timing of your life is not determined by comparison to others, but by the pace of your own growth, your own preparation, your own readiness to step into what is ahead. This interruption is not here to distract you, it is here to awaken you, to pull you out of autopilot, to make you aware of what has been happening beneath the surface, to help you recognize that there is more to your life than routine, more to your journey than survival, more to your existence than simply getting through each day. Something is asking for your attention now. Not in a loud or forceful way, but in a steady, persistent presence that you can no longer ignore. It is the sense that you are being called to rise beyond what you have known, to step into a deeper understanding of yourself, to trust that there is a purpose unfolding even when you cannot see the full picture. You may not have all the answers yet. You may not know exactly where this path is leading. But you can feel that something is shifting, something is opening, something is inviting you to move forward with a different level of awareness than before. And that is where this moment begins to matter more than any other before it, because awareness is the first step toward transformation. And once you see differently, you can no longer return to what you once were. There are battles you have fought that no one ever saw. Not the kind that leave visible marks, not the kind that draw sympathy or applause, but the quiet, relentless struggles that took place within your mind, within your heart, within the private spaces of your life where no one else could reach. You carried weight that you never spoke about. You endured pressure that others could not understand because you learned how to keep moving even while something inside you was breaking. There were days when showing up felt like a victory, even if no one recognized it. Days when simply getting through your responsibilities required more strength than anyone realized. You smiled when it was expected, you answered when spoken to, you continued forward because stopping didn't feel like an option. Yet beneath that surface, there was a constant tension, a quiet storm that never fully settled. You questioned yourself more than you admitted. You replayed conversations, second-guessed decisions, wondered if you were enough, if you were doing enough, if you were becoming who you were supposed to be. There were moments when doubt spoke louder than truth, when fear disguised itself as logic, when uncertainty made you hesitate, even when your instincts were trying to guide you. And still, you kept going. That is what makes your journey different. Not the absence of struggle, but your refusal to completely surrender to. Even when you felt drained, even when your motivation disappeared, even when everything seemed unclear, there was something within you that resisted giving up entirely. That quiet resistance, that small voice that refused to be silenced, is evidence of something deeper at work within you. You may have seen your struggles as setbacks, as obstacles that slowed you down, as burdens that made your path harder than it needed to be. But what if those very struggles were shaping something essential within you? What if the pressure you felt was not meant to break you, but to build your capacity? What if every moment of uncertainty was forcing you to develop strength that comfort could never produce? There are lessons that cannot be learned in ease. There are qualities that cannot be formed in comfort. Patience is not developed when everything happens quickly. Resilience is not built when nothing challenges you. Clarity is not discovered when everything is predictable. The very things that tested you are also training you. Think about how much you have changed because of what you have been through. The way you see people, the way you interpret situations, the way you respond to difficulty, it is not the same as it once was. You have become more aware, more observant, more discerning. You notice things now that you would have overlooked before. You sense intentions, patterns, and energies with a depth that only experience could have given you. Even your pain has refined you. It taught you what matters and what doesn't. It revealed who was truly present and who was only there when it was convenient. It showed you the difference between what is temporary and what is worth holding on to. It forced you to confront parts of yourself that you may have avoided before, the fears, the insecurities, the doubts that needed to be acknowledged before they could be transformed. There were moments when you felt like you were losing pieces of yourself, when things you once relied on began to fade, when identities you had built no longer felt accurate, when you no longer recognized the person you were becoming. That feeling of disorientation was not a sign that you were falling apart, it was a sign that you were being reshaped. Growth often feels like loss before it feels like progress. You had to let go of certain beliefs, certain expectations, certain attachments that could not follow you into the next phase of your life. And letting go is rarely easy. It creates a space that feels empty at first, a gap between what was and what will be. But that space is necessary. It is where new understanding forms, where new strength develops, where new direction begins to take shape. You were not being stripped without purpose. You were being prepared. Every time you were forced to stand alone, you were learning how to rely on something deeper than external validation. Every time things didn't go as planned, you were being taught how to adapt, how to trust beyond what you could control. Every time you faced uncertainty, you were developing the ability to move forward without needing complete clarity. These are not small lessons. These are foundational. They are shaping the way you will handle what is ahead. They are building the kind of strength that does not collapse under pressure, the kind of awareness that does not get easily distracted, the kind of confidence that is not dependent on constant reassurance. You may not have realized it while you were in the middle of those struggles, but you were becoming stronger in ways that cannot be easily measured. Not just physically or mentally, but internally at the level where your identity, your beliefs, and your sense of purpose are formed. There is a difference between appearing strong and actually becoming strong. One is performance, the other is transformation. And what you have been going through is not about appearance, it is about transformation. That is why it felt so intense at times. That is why it required so much from you. Because real change does not happen on the surface. It happens deep within, where old patterns are broken, where new perspectives are formed, where your understanding of yourself is rewritten. You are not who you were before these experiences. You cannot be. Because now you know what it feels like to endure. You know what it feels like to question and still continue. You know what it feels like to be uncertain and still move forward. Those are not weaknesses. are strengths that were forged through your willingness to keep going even when it was difficult. And even now, there may still be moments when those old feelings try to return. Moments when doubt resurfaces, when fear tries to take control, when you feel the weight of everything you have been through. But you are not the same person facing those feelings anymore. You have a deeper awareness now, a stronger foundation, a clearer understanding of what you are capable of handling. You have already proven to yourself that you can survive what once felt overwhelming. You have already moved through situations that you once thought you wouldn't be able to handle. That evidence is within you, even if you don't always acknowledge it, and what once broke you is now becoming the very thing that is building you into someone who can carry more, understand more, and step into something greater than you once imagined. There were seasons in your life when the distance didn't make sense, when people you once felt close to began to feel unfamiliar, when conversations that used to flow naturally became strained or empty, when connections you thought would last started to fade without clear explanation. It left you questioning what changed, wondering if you did something wrong, replaying moments in your mind trying to understand where the shift began. But the truth is, not every distance is a loss. Not every separation is a failure. Some distances are necessary, intentional, and deeply purposeful. Even when they feel painful in the moment, you are not meant to carry everyone into your next season. There are relationships that belong to certain versions of you, versions that were still learning, still exploring, still becoming. And as you began to grow, as your awareness deepened, as your priorities started to shift, those connections could no longer align with who you were becoming. It doesn't mean they were wrong. It means they were temporary. Growth changes your environment. It changes what you tolerate, what you value, what you are willing to invest your time and energy into. Things that once felt normal begin to feel out of place. Situations you once accepted without question begin to feel uncomfortable. Not because you have become difficult, but because you have become aware. And awareness creates separation. There were moments when you felt alone, even when you were surrounded by people. Moments when you realized that not everyone could understand the way you think, the way you feel, the direction you are being pulled toward. That realization can be isolating. It can make you feel disconnected, misunderstood, even unsupported. But that isolation was not meant to harm you. It was meant to refine you. When everything is familiar, it is easy to remain the same. When you are constantly surrounded by the same voices, the same perspectives, the same expectations, it becomes difficult to hear your own inner direction clearly. Separation creates space. And in that space, something important begins to happen. You start to hear yourself. Not the version of yourself shaped by others' opinions, not the version influenced by expectations or pressure, but the deeper, more authentic voice within you. The one that knows when something feels right or wrong. The one that senses direction even without clear evidence. The one that has been there all along, waiting for the noise to quiet down. That is why the distance was necessary. You needed space to reconnect with that voice. You needed time away from constant input to understand your own thoughts. You needed to step outside of certain environments to see them clearly. Without that separation, you might have continued to adapt to spaces that were no longer meant for you. There is a difference between being alone and being aligned. Being alone can feel empty when you are disconnected from yourself. But when you are aligned, even solitude carries a sense of purpose. It becomes a place of clarity rather than confusion. A place where you can process, reflect, and grow without distraction. You were not being isolated, you were being positioned. Positioned to think differently. Positioned to see clearly. Positioned to develop a level of independence that would not have been possible if you remained surrounded by constant familiarity. There were things you needed to learn on your own. Strength that could not be borrowed. Confidence that could not depend on others. Understanding that could only come through personal experience. These are the kinds of qualities that are formed in quiet seasons, in moments when external support feels limited. In times when you are forced to rely on something deeper within yourself. It may have felt unfair at times. Watching others move in groups while you felt like you were navigating things alone. Seeing connections around you while you were trying to understand why yours were shifting or disappearing. But comparison will always distort the purpose of your journey. Your path is not designed to look like theirs. What you are being prepared for requires a different kind of foundation, a deeper sense of self-awareness, a stronger connection to your own direction. And those things are often developed in separation, not in constant companionship. You had to learn how to stand without leaning, Not because leaning is wrong, but because dependence can limit your growth if it becomes your only source of stability. You needed to discover what it means to trust your own judgment, to make decisions without constant reassurance, to move forward even when no one else fully understands your direction. That kind of growth cannot happen in crowded spaces. It requires stillness. It requires distance. It requires moments where you have no choice but to confront your own thoughts, your own fears, your own beliefs. And while that process is not always comfortable, it is necessary. Because the more you understand yourself, the less you are shaken by external uncertainty. You begin to recognize what truly matters to you. You become more intentional with your time, your energy, your focus. You stop trying to fit into spaces that require you to shrink or compromise your growth. You start choosing alignment over acceptance. And that shift changes everything. It changes the kind of people you attract. It changes the kind of opportunities that align with you. It changes the way you respond to situations that once would have unsettled you. You begin to operate from a place of clarity rather than confusion, from intention rather than reaction. But before that clarity becomes stable, there is always a phase where things feel uncertain, where the old no longer fits and the new has not fully formed. That in-between space can feel uncomfortable. It can make you question if you are moving in the right direction. You are. Because growth often requires you to release before you receive, to let go before you fully understand what is coming. Next, to trust the process even when the outcome is not yet visible. The distance you experienced was not meant to leave you empty. It was meant to make room. Room for deeper understanding, room for stronger connections, room for opportunities that align with who you are now, not who you used to be. And while it may not have felt like elevation at the time, while it may have felt more like loss than progress, something within you was rising beyond what you had known before you were learning how. To stand in your own space without needing to fill it with noise, without needing to escape it, without needing to question its purpose, there comes a moment in your life when everything begins to feel like it is standing still, yet at the same time, something within you is urging you to move. It is not loud. It does not demand attention in obvious ways, but it is there, persistent, steady, undeniable. A quiet tension between where you have been and where you are being called to go. You may not be able to explain it clearly, but you can feel it. That inner pull, that subtle pressure, that awareness that you cannot remain the same. You are standing at a threshold, not a physical place, but a mental and spiritual one. A point where your past and your future seem to meet, where the familiar begins to lose its hold, and the unknown starts to feel closer than ever before. It is a space of decision, even if no one has asked you to decide anything out loud, because what is being asked of you now is not about external choices alone, it is about internal release. There are things you have been holding on to that you cannot carry any further. Not because they are entirely wrong, not because they have no value, but because they belong to a version of you that is no longer complete. You have outgrown certain fears, certain attachments, certain ways of thinking that once felt necessary for your survival. But growth requires recognition, and recognition requires honesty. You cannot step forward while holding on to everything behind you. There are beliefs you formed in moments of doubt that no longer reflect who you are becoming. Beliefs that told you to play small, to avoid risk, to stay within what felt safe even if it felt limiting. Those beliefs may have protected you at one point, but now they are restricting you. There are also expectations you have carried, expectations from others, expectations you placed on yourself, expectations shaped by comparison or pressure. Some of them were never truly yours to begin with. They were adopted, absorbed, accepted without question. And now, as you stand at this threshold, you can feel the weight of them more clearly than ever before. Because what is ahead of you requires space. It requires clarity. It requires a willingness to let go of what no longer aligns, even if it feels familiar, even if it once gave you comfort. Letting go is not about rejecting your past, it is about releasing its hold on your future. This is where many people hesitate. Not because they lack ability, not because they lack opportunity, but because they struggle to release what they have known for so long. The past, even when it is limiting, can feel safer than the unknown. It is predictable. It is understood. The future, on the other hand, carries uncertainty, and uncertainty can feel uncomfortable, even when it leads to growth. But you are not brought to this point to remain where you are. The discomfort you feel is not a signal to retreat. It is a signal that something is changing, that you are being stretched beyond your current limits, that you are being invited to step into something that requires a different level of trust. You may be waiting for certainty before you move, waiting for a clear sign, a complete plan, a guarantee that everything will work out. But clarity often comes after movement, not before it. You are not meant to see the entire path right now. You are meant to take the next step, and that step requires trust. Not in the sense of blind belief, but in the sense of understanding that you have already been prepared more than you realize. Everything you have been through has contributed to your ability to handle what is ahead, even if you do not fully see how yet. There is a strength within you that has been built through experience, through challenge, through moments where you had no choice but to keep going. That strength is not temporary. It is not dependent on perfect conditions. It is part of who you have become. And now it is being called forward. You can feel the hesitation, the part of you that wants to hold back, that questions whether you are ready, whether this is the right time, whether you have enough to move forward. That hesitation is natural. It is the mind trying to protect you from uncertainty. But there is another part of you that knows that staying where you are will no longer bring the same sense of stability, knows that something new is trying to emerge, knows that this moment is not just another phase but a turning point. That inner knowing is what you must begin to trust, because the longer you ignore it, the stronger the tension will become. The sense of restlessness will not disappear. It will grow. It will continue to nudge you, to remind you, to push you toward movement until you respond. You are not being rushed, but you are being invited. Invited to step beyond hesitation. Invited to release what is no longer aligned. Invited to trust that you do not need to have everything figured out to begin. This is where transformation begins, not when everything is clear, but when you decide to move forward despite the lack of clarity. It is a shift from waiting to acting, from questioning to trusting, from holding on to letting go. And that shift does not happen all at once. It happens in moments, in decisions that may seem small on the surface but carry deeper significance. Choosing to think differently, choosing to respond differently, choosing to believe something new about yourself. Each of those choices moves you forward. Each of those choices creates distance between who you were and who you are becoming. You are not expected to become everything at once. You are not expected to have complete confidence in every step, but you are being asked to begin, to acknowledge that you are no longer where you used to be, to accept that something new is unfolding within you, to release what no longer fits, even if it once felt essential, and to take a step forward, even if it feels uncertain, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if it requires you to trust in a way you have never trusted before, because this threshold is not meant to hold you in place, it is meant to be crossed. There is a moment when everything you have been through begins to speak back to you, not as confusion, not as pain, but as clarity. A moment when the scattered pieces of your journey start forming a pattern, when what once felt random begins to feel intentional, when what once felt heavy begins to reveal its purpose. You may not have noticed it immediately, but something within you has already begun to shift into alignment with who you are meant to become. You have been waiting for confirmation, not always consciously, not always in words, but in feeling. A sense that what you are experiencing is leading somewhere, that the challenges you have faced were not meaningless, that the direction you feel pulled toward is not just imagination. That confirmation has not always come in obvious ways. It has not always arrived as clear answers or external validation. Instead, it has been subtle, woven into moments of realization, into quiet understanding, into the growing awareness that you are no longer who you used to be. You can feel it in the way you respond to things now. Situations that once overwhelmed you no longer have the same control over your thoughts. Opinions that once defined your decisions no longer carry the same weight. You are becoming more grounded in your own perspective, more certain in your own direction, even if you cannot fully explain it yet. That is not coincidence. That is confirmation. You have been changing from the inside out, and that kind of change does not always announce itself loudly. It happens gradually, through repeated experiences, through reflection, through moments where you choose differently than you would have before. Over time, those choices begin to reshape the way you see yourself and the way you move through the world. There was a time when you doubted your ability to handle what you were facing. A time when uncertainty felt overwhelming, when you questioned whether you were strong enough, capable enough, prepared enough. But you continued. Even when it was difficult, even when you did not have clear answers, even when you felt unsure, you did not completely stop. That matters more than you realize. Because consistency in the midst of uncertainty is what builds real confidence. Not the kind that depends on perfect outcomes, but the kind that is rooted in experience. The kind that knows you can figure things out because you have done it before. The kind that trusts your ability to adapt, to learn, to keep moving forward even when things do not go as planned. You are no longer waiting for permission in the same way you once were. There was a time when you looked outward for validation, when you measured your progress based on others' opinions, when you hesitated to move unless you felt supported or understood. But now, something is changing. You are beginning to recognize that your direction does not need to be approved by everyone to be valid. That realization is powerful, because it frees you from the need to constantly explain yourself, to constantly justify your choices, to constantly seek reassurance before taking action. It allows you to move with a different kind of confidence, one that is quieter, but more stable, one that is not easily shaken by external uncertainty. You are starting to trust yourself, not perfectly, not completely, but more than before. And that trust is what will carry you forward. Because there will always be moments where the path is unclear, where outcomes are uncertain, where external confirmation is limited. In those moments, your ability to rely on your own understanding becomes essential. Everything you have experienced has been contributing to that ability. The challenges taught you how to endure. The uncertainty taught you how to adapt. The setbacks taught you how to reassess and adjust. Even the moments that felt like failures were part of your development. They showed you what does not work, what does not align, what needs to be approached differently. Nothing was wasted. Even the time you thought you lost was shaping your awareness. Even the mistakes you wish you could change were contributing to your growth. You are carrying more understanding now than you were before. More perspective, more clarity about what matters and what does not. And that clarity is leading you somewhere. You may not have the full picture yet. You may not know exactly how everything will unfold, but you can sense that you are moving in a direction that feels more aligned than anything you have experienced before. That sense of alignment is not accidental. It is the result of everything you have been through coming together in a way that begins to make sense. You are stepping into a version of yourself that is more aware, more intentional, more grounded. A version that does not need to rush because it understands timing. A version that does not need to prove because it understands value. A version that does not need to force because it understands alignment. This is where your calling begins to feel real, not as something distant or abstract, but as something that is already taking shape within your daily life, in the way you think, in the way you choose, in the way you respond to opportunities and challenges. It is not separate from you, it is expressed through you. And the more you recognize that, the more you begin to move with purpose. Not because everything is certain, but because you understand that uncertainty does not mean you are off track. It means you are in the process. A process that requires patience, awareness, and a willingness to continue moving even when everything is not fully clear. You are not the same person who started this journey. You have grown, even in ways you have not fully acknowledged. You have developed strength that cannot be easily taken from you, understanding that cannot be easily undone, awareness that cannot be easily ignored. And that growth is not temporary. It is part of who you are now, which means the way you move forward will not be the same as before. You will make different choices. You will respond differently to challenges. You will recognize opportunities that you might have overlooked in the past, because you are no longer operating from the same level of understanding. You are seeing more clearly now. And with that clarity comes responsibility. Responsibility to trust what you are sensing. Responsibility to act on what you are recognizing. Responsibility to continue growing, even when it requires effort, even when it requires discipline, even when it requires you to move beyond what feels comfortable. You are not waiting anymore in the same way. You are preparing to step fully into what has been forming within you. Preparing to move with intention rather than hesitation. Preparing to live in a way that reflects the understanding you have gained. And that preparation is already changing the way you carry yourself, the way you think, the way you approach what is ahead, because when something is truly aligned, it does not need to be forced, it begins to unfold as you continue to move forward with awareness.